On our wedding night she whispered his name in bed, then told me I was imagining things. Do you know what it feels like when your entire life, the moment you thought was the pinnacle of everything you had worked for, fractures in a single breath? That's what it was like for me. One whispered word, one slip of the tongue, one name. And it wasn't mine. The room still smelled of flowers from the reception, champagne fizzing faintly in half-empty glasses on the table, her dress hanging over the chair like some fragile relic. I remember the sound of rain tapping softly against the hotel window, the city lights bleeding in through the thin curtains. Everything about that night was supposed to feel sacred, untouchable, like the closing of one chapter and the start of another. Instead, it felt like someone had ripped the pages out before I even turned them. We had made love slow, unsteady, tired but filled with all the passion you'd expect from two people who had promised forever, only hours earlier. My hands were tangled in hers, my heart pounding, my head filled with all the clichés of love stories and honeymoon dreams. And then she whispered it. His name, not mine. His. For a moment I froze. My body went cold while my skin still burned with sweat. I thought I'd misheard, that the wine and exhaustion had scrambled my brain. But then she said it again, softer this time, like a reflex, like something her heart spilled without permission. I pulled back, staring at her, my breath shallow. What did you say? Her eyes snapped open, wide and startled, and then too quickly she laughed. You're imagining things, she whispered, brushing my cheek with her hand. You're just tired. We both are. Imagining things. Those words cut deeper than the name, because they weren't just a denial. They were a dismissal, a rewriting of reality, a subtle way of telling me that what I had heard, what I knew I had heard, didn't matter. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so badly. I told myself it was the exhaustion, the wine, the overwhelming chaos of the day. I told myself I was being insecure, paranoid, fragile. I forced myself to kiss her forehead, to lie back down, to hold her as though nothing had broken. But my chest ached with every breath. My mind replayed those syllables on an endless loop. His name. Who was he? That was the question that ate me alive in the weeks that followed. She had never mentioned anyone by that name before. Not a friend, not a colleague, not even in passing. Yet it had spilled out of her mouth so easily, so naturally, like a secret she had whispered 100 times before. The first days of marriage should feel like heaven. Hours felt like a puzzle. I searched her face for clues, her words for slips, her phone for signs. At first I found nothing, and that made it worse, because doubt grows fastest in silence. She was perfect, almost too perfect. She laughed, kissed me, cooked me breakfast in the mornings, sent me texts in the afternoons. But there was something behind her eyes, a flicker, a hesitation, and every time I heard that name in my head, I saw it reflected in her. Weeks turned into months, and I tried to bury it. I told myself love is about trust, that if you dig too much you only destroy what you're trying to protect. But it never left me. At night, when she rolled over in her sleep, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she ever dreamed of him, if she whispered his name again when she thought I wasn't listening. Then the cracks began to show. A late meeting here, a missed call there, smiles at her phone. She quickly tucked away when I entered the room. A perfume I didn't recognize clinging to her dress. I asked questions, careful, casual, but her answers were always smooth, too smooth. And every time, if I pressed too hard, she'd laugh and say, "You're imagining things." That phrase became a weapon, a way to make me doubt myself, to question my own senses, my own sanity. But beneath the doubt, anger simmered, not the kind that bursts into shouting matches, but the kind that coils tight, waiting. It all came to a head 6 months into our marriage. She left her purse on the counter one night, open just enough for me to see the corner of an envelope, a hotel bill. My hands shook as I pulled it out, heart hammering. Ocean Crest Hotel. One night. A suite, 2 signatures. Hers and his, the same name. The one she whispered on our wedding night. I sat down at the table, the bill trembling in my hands. Proof. Solid. Undeniable proof. I wasn't imagining things. I never had been. When she came home later, I was still there, The bill spread out on the table like a weapon. She froze in the doorway, her eyes locking on it instantly. Her face drained of color. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low, steady, colder than I had ever heard it before. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then, as if on instinct, she whispered, "You're imagining things." I laughed. I don't know why. It wasn't funny, but the absurdity of it, the audacity, broke something in me. "Imagining," I said, holding up the paper. "Is this imagination? Is this name, this signature, a dream too? Tell me, is he imaginary too?" She started to cry, but I had no sympathy left. Not then, because I realized, in that moment, that the betrayal hadn't started with the hotel, or even with the name whispered in the dark. It had started with the gaslighting, with her convincing me to doubt myself, to erase my own truth, so she could protect hers, and that was unforgivable. I didn't scream, I didn't throw things, I didn't hit or break or beg. I simply stood, walked past her, and left, because sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can do. That night, I sat in my car by the ocean, staring at the waves crashing against the shore, the hotel bill on the passenger seat. The name stared back at me, etched into the paper like a scar. His name, the man she had chosen in whispers long before she ever said I did. I knew then that my marriage was over, but I also knew this wasn't the end of the story, because if she wanted to convince me I was imagining things, then I would show her, and everyone else, the reality she couldn't hide. And the next act, I decided, wouldn't be whispered in the dark, it would be shouted in the light. That night by the ocean, with the hotel bill staring at me from the passenger seat, I thought I was broken beyond repair. The waves crashed against the rocks, and I sat there in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. My wife, my brand new wife, had whispered another man's name in our bed, dismissed me like I was crazy, and now here was his name, written right next to hers on paper, that smelled faintly of her perfume. I should have driven off into the night, disappeared, let them destroy each other. But something in me, something I didn't know I had, began to stir. Not rage, not despair, something colder. A clarity that only comes when you realize you've been living in someone else's lie for too long. She had spent months telling me I was imagining things. Every smile at her phone, every late-night meeting, every pause when I asked questions. She didn't just cheat on me, she rewrote my reality, gaslit me into doubting myself. And when someone does that to you, the worst thing you can do is let them keep the story. So I decided I wouldn't. She had whispered in the dark. I would speak in the light. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly, then parked outside a 24-hour diner. I sat at the counter, drank bitter coffee, and spread the hotel bill out in front of me, like a general studying a map. The waitress asked if I wanted pie. I shook my head. What I wanted was a plan. And by the time the sun came up, I had one. The first step wasn't confrontation. Not yet. That would be too easy for her. Too private. Too controlled. I wanted something undeniable. Something she couldn't laugh away with. "You're imagining things." I wanted truth with teeth. So I started gathering. Over the next weeks I became an investigator in my own marriage. I checked credit card statements, phone records, work schedules. I scrolled through old photos, looking for details I'd ignored before. I even drove to the Ocean Crest Hotel and asked a favor from the concierge I knew from college. He didn't give me details, of course, but his hesitation told me everything. They'd been there, more than once. And then, by accident, I found the message that broke it all open. She'd left her laptop open one night while she showered. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't, but the notification pinged, bold and bright, and his name appeared. Just his name, but it was enough to make my heart race. My hands shook as I opened the thread. And there it was, their entire affair, laid out in texts, plans for weekends away, jokes about me telling her how he couldn't believe she'd slipped up and said his name that night, and her replying, "He's too naive. He'll never leave." That one sentence did something to me I can't quite explain. It killed the part of me that was clinging to love, to denial, to hope. It replaced it with steel. I copied everything, every text, every message, every detail, screenshots, backups. I printed them too, in case she tried to erase them later, and I didn't stop there. I dug into him. His job, his family, his reputation. He wasn't just some fling. He was her boss, the man who controlled her promotions, her projects, her career trajectory. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd traded me for leverage. The irony is, they thought they were untouchable. They laughed at me in those messages, saw me as the fool, the naive husband who would never do anything. And that was their mistake. Because when people think you're powerless, they never see you coming. The chance came sooner than I expected. Her company was hosting another gala, bigger than the first one. Investors, clients, colleagues, all under one roof. She had been bragging about it for weeks, giddy over the idea of being recognized for a major project, and I knew, in that moment, exactly how it would end. On the night of the gala, I dressed carefully, not like her driver, not like the invisible shadow she'd tried to make me. I wore the best suit I owned, polished shoes, a tie that made me look sharp enough to cut. When I walked into that ballroom with her, I didn't feel like her husband anymore. I felt like her reckoning. The night sparkled with chandeliers, laughter, the clinking of glasses. She floated from person to person, radiant, with him never far from her side. People whispered about how close they seemed, but no one dared say it out loud. I watched quietly, sipping my drink, the folder of evidence heavy in my briefcase at the coat check. Then came the award. She was called to the stage, glowing under the spotlight, thanking her team, thanking him, thanking everyone who had believed in her. She raised her glass to toast. That was my cue. I walked to the stage, calm, deliberate, every eye turning toward me. She froze, her smile faltering for the first time all night. He stiffened in his seat. "Before we toast," I said, my voice steady, carrying through the hall, "let's make sure everyone knows exactly what we're toasting to." I clicked the remote in my pocket. The screen behind her flickered, and then it began. Slide 1. The hotel bill. Her name, his name, side by side. Gasps rippled through the room. She turned, staring at it, her face draining of color. Slide 2. The spa charges, both names signed together. Whispers grew louder. People shifted in their seats, some covering their mouths. Slide 3. The texts. His words, her replies. That one line. "He's too naive. He'll never leave." The room erupted. Murmurs, gasps, outright exclamation. Colleagues turned to each other. Investors shook their heads. Someone even laughed bitterly. Her boss buried his face in his hands. She just stood there, trembling, the award slipping from her fingers and clattering to the stage floor. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "This is my wife. This is her boss. And this is the truth." Then I walked away. The chaos behind me was deafening. Her voice crying out, his voice trying to defend, the crowd buzzing with disbelief. But I didn't look back. I walked out into the night, the cold air hitting my face like freedom. The fallout was immediate. The next morning, it was everywhere. Emails, whispers, calls. The company scrambled. His career crumbled overnight. Her award was rescinded, her reputation shattered. People distanced themselves in droves. The same colleagues who had once toasted her success now avoided her like a plague. She tried to reach me, of course. Dozens of calls, messages, emails, apologies, excuses, even anger. "You ruined me," she wrote once, and I laughed, because she had ruined herself. All I did was pull back the curtain. As for him, he resigned quietly. His marriage ended, too. I heard his wife left him within weeks. He went from power suits and boardrooms to rumors of bartending at some dive across town. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I rebuilt. The first nights alone were hard. The silence was crushing. I questioned everything, my worth, my choices, the years I had given her. But over time, I realized something important. She hadn't destroyed me. She had revealed me. She had shown me that I could survive the unthinkable, walk through humiliation, and come out sharper, stronger, freer. Months later, I saw her on the street. She looked smaller somehow, worn down, her eyes tired. She tried to smile, whispered, "Can we talk?" I shook my head. "No, you said I was imagining things, but I wasn't, and I won't imagine a life with you anymore." And I walked away, because betrayal begins in whispers, but healing begins in silence. the kind you choose for yourself. She thought whispering his name on our wedding night was the beginning of my end. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of hers. And mine? It was the start of a story she never got to write.